My name is Jane Gagne, and this is my presentation on libraries and evolving history. The word library is actually really interesting. It's an anglicized form of the Old French word librairie, which refers to bookstores and book collections as early as the 1300s. Librairie is likely derived from the Latin librarium, which was really anything that held books such as a shelf or a trunk. Librarium comes from the Latin word for book, and the word library itself can refer now to pretty much any collection of information, often the written word, such as books, but it can refer to digital collections or audio collections, etc. There are actually lots of different types of libraries. You can have personal libraries, which is just like it sounds, it's somebody's personal collection. You can have an academic, university, or research library. Those are usually connected to a college or university, but they can be connected to a different research group as well. You can have archives and special collections. Those are usually dedicated to a specific subject or time period, something like that. You can have digital libraries where everything is completely digital. There's nothing to hold in your hands. You can have subscription libraries, which you usually have to pay some sort of fee in order to have access to them. There are also state and national libraries, which are just what they sound. They're kind of the figurehead of the National Library. And there are public libraries, which is what most people think of when they think of a library. That's going to be your city and regional libraries that are accessible to the public. Libraries have probably existed for as long as the written word because human beings are really interested in the pursuit of knowledge and collecting things. Ancient libraries, even the public ones, were more like repositories of knowledge than like the lending libraries you might see today. For example, scholars could visit a library and they could study or copy texts available there, but they usually could not take anything away. Libraries depended upon the wealthy to give text to those collections, or civilizations could trade for new editions. Another popular way to acquire text was through conquest. This is just kind of a testament to how important these materials were. They were taken as loot when cities were sacked, and it's really important to note that having visible proof of your knowledge and power was considered prestigious. One of the most famous ancient libraries was the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. Called the Great Library, it may have held up to 400,000 texts at its peak, but the records are a little bit spotty. It is often considered a proto-version of a public library in the sense that visiting scholars were free to view and copy the texts, and the text covered a broad range of topics from all over the known world. Another concept here is kind of the universal library. The popular myth says that it burned dramatically, but it is more likely that the library slowly deteriorated over time due to political unrest, lack of funding, lack of leadership, and it just kind of fell apart. The Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries planted a lot of the seeds of what we consider the modern public library. The beliefs were the motivating factors between the development of libraries at the time, and it had a lot to do with those principles of knowledge for knowledge's sake, the importance of thinking, the importance of understanding nature and society, and the idea that improving one citizen helps improve the whole country. It was also the beginning of the great national and state libraries that you think of when you think of national libraries. The Enlightenment enthusiasm for learning led to the rapid expansion of the presence of libraries with little regulation or long-term planning and support systems. They were often created by large endowments, but there was no plan to continue funding in the long term. There weren't collection development strategies, they were just large, disorganized messes. And you also saw a lot of libraries being built in the colonies, but these libraries weren't truly public libraries because they were really meant for the colonizers and they weren't really for the natives. So you see early libraries in Senegal and India, but they weren't necessarily for the native peoples of those places. In the second half of the 19th century, you really start to see the public library as we think of it today. Jewett, in his Notices of Public Libraries in the United States of America, written in 1851, defined public libraries as libraries which are accessible either without restriction or upon conditions with which all can easily comply to every person who wishes to use them. And that definition is still pretty relevant today. In 1850, the Public Library Act in the UK established ways to use public funding to build libraries in the different boroughs. The Boston Public Library was founded in 1852, and that's kind of considered one of the first truly public libraries in the United States, and it just sort of a domino effect. One example of that domino effect is when China sent agents to the Western powers to study their culture, and when they came back, they had so much praise for these public libraries that they saw. The Chinese government took that information and they began encouraging their own public library expansion, and that expansion happened rapidly in the early 20th century. And China also started establishing their own national library, and that library is still in Beijing, and you can visit it today. And national and public libraries became a staple of all developed societies. The second half of the 20th century is really dominated by the information age and the development of the internet. The internet was developed to make information free and accessible to everyone, and in this sense, it is very much in the spirit of the public library ideal. And it's no surprise that public libraries really latched on to this idea that they were part of the new information network. The 21st century has really shown how flexible public libraries are. They come in every shape and size, and they evolve based on the needs and resources of their communities. And their roles are always expanding and changing. They are taking on digital literacy, technological literacy, access to shared spaces. They're even producing maker spaces where people can come in and craft items. They are providing locations for homeschools to meet. They are collaborating internationally, really becoming part of a global network, and they're providing essentials like job help and access to internet. Looking to the past can often give up inspiration for the present. And this is where studying the history of libraries can be really revealing for the future of libraries, because they have been evolving since the beginning of their creation. And libraries now are moving towards a participatory model, positioning themselves as collaborators. This means that libraries are becoming more active in their participation and not passive. Thank you for watching.